a wonderful time, but it was a rough time. And at the end, I did a smart thing, Veronica. I swallowed my pride and I walked away from the bar because at the end I was blacking out and I'd find like, oh, I took 4 Ambiens last night in a blackout and it's 3 days later. That stuff is super dangerous. And I was flirting with the line of death many times. But at the end of the 3 years, I could see it pretty clear of like, wow, if I stay here, I'm probably not going to make it back.
I dreamt that you were twisting through 7.
Hello and welcome back to the Soberful podcast. I am thrilled to have Paul Churchill here today as our special guest. Hi, Paul.
Hello, Veronica. How are you?
I'm good. Some of you guys may know Paul from the Recovery Elevator podcast. I know lots of people love that podcast and credit it with helping them get sober.
Yeah, Veronica, thank you for having me. I appreciate it. You know, in our private community, we just did a book club study and we did one of your books. And thank you for showing up for the book club study. Yeah, you're doing great work in this space as well.
What we're going to talk about today is how anything is possible when we get sober. And I really kind of want to use this as highlighting all of the good stuff about sobriety, because a lot of it is hard and a lot of it is a trudge. And I know countless people who are just living lives beyond, like, I don't know. How long have you been sober for, Paul?
September 7, 2014 was my last drink. So coming up on 10 years this September, not there yet, but
yeah.
I hope that's where I'm going. That's the goal.
Yeah. And right, I'm coming up to 24 years in May. And again, if somebody had told me this at the start of my sobriety, what my life would be like now, I just couldn't have believed it was possible. And there's nothing special and different about us, right? This wasn't luck.
100%, right? I needed a lot of help and it was so beautiful looking back. You use the word trudge and that's it. Sometimes the day to day, it's like, oh my gosh, this is brutal. But looking back when I zoom out, I was so supported, by people, I think by the universe as well. Some people would call that a higher power or God. And it was neat to see how it all lined up at the right time. You know, ask and you shall receive. Really everything that I've ever asked for, I've received. Sometimes it's a challenge to walk through it and accept it and to receive it. Go, whoa, this is scary. But as you just said, anything is possible in a life without alcohol. And alcohol, you know, I think we've been duped as a society. Alcohol is the most dangerous drug on the planet. Yeah. It kills more people than any other drug combined, which is scary, right? And we can cover that stuff.
Yeah.
But I have a feeling we're going to cover the more expansive part of sobriety, which is the joy of life. And the neat things that can happen. So I remember in elementary school, middle school, high school, or childhood, and I think we've all had it for at least a little bit of time, is the feeling of you could do anything you want if you set your mind to it, that anything is possible. You know, and then I think life hits. I think a lot of us, when they graduate high school and college, it's like, whoa, this is way harder than I thought. Alcohol aside, it's just like, wow, life can be a challenge. I'm starting at the bottom after you graduate high school or college or whatnot. And that feeling goes away. And then when I entered into a heavy drinking problem in my early 20s, and so I graduated college, I moved to Spain and I bought a bar. These are the cliff notes, of course.
Okay, I want to go a bit more into this. Okay, so how does so you go to college in America?
Yeah, going to college in America is like a 4-year institution in drinking. Yeah. It really is. Like alcohol, fraternity parties, all that stuff.
Same
it's
in
just
the
like
UK.
Game on.
It's the same in the UK.
Yeah. And, you know, I think I've heard the UK as well, but also it's like a safe container for kids to go grow up, get shit-faced, explore alcohol, drugs or whatnot. And a lot of them get a good education, which I think I did as well. So I studied abroad when I was 21, I think my junior year of college, in a place called Granada, Spain. It's absolutely incredible. It's got one of the 7 wonders of the world, the Alhambra there.
Yeah.
It's a Moorish, it's a Catholic castle, it's incredible. I went there and then I had such a great time. I came back with some friends and we started a pub crawl. I've always been an entrepreneur. And at this time I did not have a drinking problem. And a pub crawl it's like a tour of the nightlife. Mm-hmm. So we had a summer where I think our average pub crawl was like 50 to 55 people. We were just given tours of the nightlife. And then I came back, graduated college, and I had a job in finance lined up. And that just wasn't getting me excited about life or anything. So I had the idea to go back to Spain and buy a bar, and I ended up buying half of the bar of my favorite bar that we did the pub crawl at. Kept in contact with the guys. And so I had a Spanish business partner, but I moved home after college, saved money for a whole year, went out
that's
there.
a pretty, that's a pretty bold move to at 20 something. That's not is it because we're so in our 20s, so, we're fearless almost, but that's a pretty bold move.
Yeah, Veronica, it seems like a different lifetime ago, but I've always had an energy that I don't go upstream, but I'm like, all right, here's the traditional way or path.
Right.
Neat. And
Right.
that works. But sometimes I deviate and do my own thing. And you're right. It's not conventional, but I went home, I saved money for a whole year, borrowed some money from a family and friends, went out there and I bought half of a bar in Granada, Spain, ages 24 to 27. And it was the best time of my life, as you can imagine. And it was also the worst time of my life. The loneliness and the pull to the bottle, I still feel it today. That pain is so visceral, being so far away from home. And alcohol connected me when I first took that first drink when I was 13 or 14. It's like, hello, Paul. It's nice to finally meet you. And I kept doubling down on this substance called alcohol for a connection. And it worked for a time. Veronica, it did. I was a normal drinker for about 7 years. But looking back, I was not a normal drinker when I went out to Spain to buy the bar. That progression into alcoholism or in a pretty serious drinking problem was there before I started. And at the end of that, Veronica, here, I'll just give you my routine, my morning routine. I'd go to bed around 4 a.m. after closing the bar. I'd wake up at 6 a.m. sharp, walk across the street, buy a box of wine and two cans of beer, come back to my apartment, shuffle back to my apartment. I'd drink a box of wine and 2 beers within 8 minutes, go back to bed till 1 or 2. I did that for a year straight.
Oof.
And yeah. And here's the neat thing about, you call it a disease or whatnot, any addiction. Maybe I said the neat thing. The scary thing is if you were to ask me a year ago after that, if I had a problem, if I was an alcoholic or had a drinking problem, I would have been like, whoa, no way. Get out of town, brother. And that actually did happen. I had therapists ask, is alcohol a problem, you think? This is in my 20s, after Spain. No, you kidding me? But looking back, not a lot of people drink like that in their early 20s. Very, very, very few people do. And the ones that do, yeah, they could be alcoholics. They have a major drinking problem. So as you can imagine, that was a wonderful time, but it was a rough time. And at the end, I did a smart thing, Veronica. I swallowed my pride and I walked away from the bar because at the end, I was blacking out. And I'd find I took 4 Ambiens last night in a blackout and it's 3 days later. That stuff is super dangerous. And I was flirting with the line of death many times. And youthfulness and hopefulness can only get you so far. But at the end of the 3 years, I could see it pretty clear of wow, if I stay here, I'm probably not going to make it back.
Wow.
So that was a challenge at age 26, 27 to I lost it all, just walked away from it. And I even paid my parents back and I I had one friend who lent me money to talk about pride, which I'm happy I did though. So at age 24, I found myself on top of the world, running a nightclub or a bar in Spain, deals with nightclubs and stuff. It was so much fun. Age 27, I found myself back in my parents' basement with wow, what the hell just happened? I have nothing now. The geographical cure did help a bit. I didn't own a bar when I was living in my parents' basement, but to get my life back on track and tease out what the issue was, I didn't quite know that alcohol was the problem. Yes, I was drinking less, but it was still with me. Went to graduate school age 28 or 9 at University of Washington. And then on January 1st, 2010, I decided to go a month without alcohol. That lasted 2.5 years. And that was this incredible waking up process of, wow, okay, I've been drunk for most of my 20s. And alcohol, even if I have a couple of days off, it still completely has its hooks in me. So I needed to go a good couple of years without alcohol to figure it out. And my life got so much better. Physically, I healed. Mentally, I healed. The spiritual component, we'll cover that later, perhaps. But what I found out during that period, Veronica, is the term dry drunk. I just wasn't drinking. That's it. There was no community. All my friends were super acceptive of it and very supportive. It wasn't peer pressure. But after 2.5 years, I went to an AA meeting for the very first time in support of a friend because I don't have a problem. I just went 2.5 years. And in that meeting, I heard stories of DUI, prison time, multiple DUI, fiery car crashes, bankruptcy, And, the thinking mind pieces things together. And I was like, wow, that never happened to me. I don't have a drinking problem. So I think I was drunk the same night or 2 nights later. And I found myself 2 a.m. Googling. I had a bottle of hydrogen peroxide and rubbing alcohol next to my computer. I was Googling, which one could keep the party going. So the next day I woke up after that, Veronica, and I was like, oh my gosh, I was definitely on to something with sobriety.
So what happened? What happened? Can I just ask you, back when you were doing the bar, what kind of drunk were you? Did you drink while you were working?
Yeah, Veronica,
Because it
like I
sounds
said,
like you were almost like lubricated round the clock.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. And it was part of the business. I think a lot of bar owners or people in the service industry crash and burn into an addiction with alcohol or whatnot. But to put into perspective, there's a thing called Power Hour where we did a shot of sangria every minute. Every minute. Oh my gosh. So basically I think I did 100 shots of sangria, which is probably like
that can kill people.
Yeah. And I was working and I was drinking beers with other people. So the tolerance was absolutely through the roof.
Jeez.
There was no sleep unless I was completely shit-faced. Yeah, the body was physically addicted to alcohol, and the withdrawals. When I walked away, I had audible hallucinations. This is where you hear things that aren't really there for about 3 weeks.
Yeah, I've had that.
That was terrifying,
It is.
Veronica. I'm like in my parents' house 2 weeks after I left, and I'm hearing things that just aren't there. And I'm like, wow, is this going to be it for the rest of my life? Thankfully, and I think you can attest to this, of just how beautiful the human body, mind, and spirit is, and it's all reversible. Except like end stage liver failure, but most of this, if you don't go down far enough, is all reversible. And one time I wrote down all the trauma that my body had gone through, like this is like physical sports, American football, stupid shit done while drunk. And I said, wow, like I have absolutely thrashed this body, but how beautiful of a system and mechanism it is to rebound the way it is. And, last night I found myself eating probably a pint of ice cream. And is that good for you? I don't know. But sometimes it's harm reduction. I'm not drinking, and I do love ice cream and I love pizza as well. But I guess the point of what I was going is the body can heal, the mind can heal. And back on to what we were talking about is once we get these toxins out of our system, and absolutely that's what it is, we have to detox from it. And then there's some mental clarity that comes back. And I think hitched with a little bit of the spirituality part of, wow, the universe is responding with me in every moment. It's always been walking with me, that anything is possible. And I think it wasn't day one of alcohol-free living, Veronica, but I think probably 6 months, maybe a year and a half in, the feeling that I had when I was a child of anything is possible came back. And it's such a beautiful feeling because of, like, if you think it, you can dream it, you can do it. And it's still here. It's still here. Like I have been, I don't say humbled a bit by life. Like it's hard to make anything happen in life, but I think without the toxin, the drug, alcohol, and you start working with spirituality, or you start working with your own soul and energy and learning the universe, learning the clock of the universe, found everything I was doing was a little too fast. I wasn't quite on the pace of the universe, and I'm still learning, of course, but anything is possible without alcohol.
So, okay, so you stopped drinking for 2.5 years, but you don't do like any work on yourself, but you're just going to feel so much better after the way that you were drinking. So you're just going to feel like your energy, you're just going to feel, so you drink again, and then what happens?
Okay. I drink again. And as I mentioned, that first night, I drank all the alcohol in the house, Googled if I could drink rubbing alcohol. I drank my roommate's bottle of wine from his wedding. I'm like, hey, dude, I'm really sorry. Was that bottle of wine important? It was a bottle of champagne. It's like, oh, yeah, it's for my wedding. Sorry. And we're still good buddies today. But yeah, I realized it's like, wow, okay, I was onto something that I picked up right where I left off. And then it was a trudge. I think that's the word we used earlier. It kind of escaped me. I said, well, I had 2.5 years. I'll just do it again. Hey, Veronica, I got 10 months. And then I think I got 3. And then I got 6 weeks. And then it was a string of day ones for about 1.5 years.
Wow.
And that gets scary. That gets scary. And there was a time in July of 2014 where I went to a practitioner. My doctor wasn't there. Somebody filled in, and I got a prescription for like 30 benzos, diazepam. which, it's harm reduction, I guess, but it's kind of alcohol in a pill format. And I had a night of such hopelessness and despair. I was like, I just took them all. I took, I think, 24 diazepams, all the other, pills I had. And I've talked to a couple of medical practitioners about this, and they're like, yeah, that should have done the trick. But I woke up the next day and was like, God dang it. I'm still here. And thankfully I'm still here. There was something watching over me that night. But that summer, it got so grim, Veronica. It did. That was a series of day ones. You lose hope because you make these internal promises to yourself of, I'm never going to touch alcohol again. This pain is so visceral. And sometimes it only carries you a couple hours into the day where it's like 11 a.m. and, where am I driving? Going to the liquor store. But finally, I started.
Can I ask,
yeah, of course.
where were you living? What were you doing? Were you living still in your parents' basements? Were you working?
Yeah. And I'm very proud of myself after finding myself with nothing at age 27. I went to grad school in Washington, and I found myself in the beautiful Rocky Mountains of Bozeman, Montana. And I had a couple businesses. I was some entrepreneurial endeavors were going well. I had a beautiful standard poodle named Ben, but I was also quite alone,
right.
Very, very alone,
right.
and isolated. And
right.
Opposite of addiction is connection, and I was so disconnected. And it's really this dog, Veronica. Sometimes people, thank you for the podcast. It's neat, but I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for the beautiful, beautiful standard poodle who's with me right now in Costa Rica. So it was that summer. I was a wedding DJ, had a wedding DJ business, greatest job ever.
Mm-hmm.
But, I got a DUI in July while driving to work. And then 3 weeks later, I found myself driving drunk again to a wedding, and I was DJing a wedding drunk. And it just kind of hit me. I was like, man, you almost played the wrong processional song, the wrong song where the dad walks the bride down the aisle. Like, I almost did that. And at cocktail hour, I think I had 4 or 5 glasses of wine, and there was this energy entering me, Veronica, that even though I was pretty tipsy, this energy was like, if we keep going with this, it's all over. Like, you're on such borrowed time right now, buddy. And I knew that I was not going to finish that wedding. Like, it wasn't going to happen. And B, like, if something, another energy opposing the energy of addiction didn't happen, then I was toast. So luckily the universe had my back. Another DJ just finished. I had like several DJs with me, or in this business that I had. So a DJ filled in for me that night. An event of his just ended right down the road. He filled in for me that night. Somebody came up, picked me up. I called my parents 100 times. Nobody picked up. But I was like, I'm going to treatment. And that was the gift of desperation. That was me fully surrendering to, it was like the heart, the mind, the body, and soul all coming together in the front passenger seat of my friend's car. I was like, I can't do this. I can't beat this. I have a sports background, Veronica. I played a lot of sports, and it backfires with this because you think, I'll just double down. I'll just work harder. Like, I'll just get the right mindset going. And I just had a moment of like, I can't do this. Like, this is not working. I'm dying. I am very slowly, but more rapidly, precipitously killing myself. And I knew I was going to be a goner. And Veronica, my next drink wasn't that next morning. It was about 6 days later. But the next morning, I remember hearing the birds for the first time. And in the rooms, this is like the window of clarity, yada, yada, yada. But I remember the next day, something was different. My next drink was about 6 days later at a camping trip with friends. I drank half of a beer, and I looked at it and I dumped it out because I knew if I finished that beer, I was a goner. Left the camping trip. That was September 7, or September 8. Yeah, September 7, 2014. And I knew I needed accountability, Veronica. As I mentioned, I burned the ships with my parents earlier that summer with my best friends in September that year, or late August that year. And I remember going to an AA meeting, I think in October. This voice was like, I got this. And I've heard that voice so many times. We've all heard that voice. Hey, it's going to be different this time. Oh, we're only going to have 1 or 2. I just stopped in my tracks. And I said, gosh, dang it. No, we are going to the AA meeting, and we have to do more. I'd been a fan of podcasts. And at that moment, there wasn't a lot in this space. And maybe I was focusing on the differences and not the similarities. Who knows? But I was like, man, I think I'm going to start a podcast in this space. I went on a 5,000-mile road trip in November of that year to kind of piece it together in our mind and prepare myself. Like, man, I'm going to put my deepest, darkest secrets in MP3 format for anybody who wants to listen. But I did the pros and cons and say, hey, look, if I stay sober, Doesn't matter what else happens. Like that's the only thing that's important here. So in the first episode, Veronica came out February 25th, 2015. I remember that date well because I remember trying to go to bed at night. I was going, what have I done? My goodness. Because you can't unburn some of those ships. It's out. I got my first email like 3 weeks later, and I was so terrified to read it. I thought it was going to be criticism, you loser, whatnot. There's a stigma around this stuff. It's mostly in our own minds, but there is. And it was a listener saying, hey, thank you. That's it. And then it kind of just kept going. It was this slow roll. We've never been viral. We've never gone viral. I think this space is a little challenging because it's not a word of mouth space. It's like, hey, check out this sober pod. Wait, you're sober? Like we just don't talk about it. And so it's been a slow roll. And here we are, 470 something episodes, an episode every Monday. We've done 5 alcohol-free travel trips across the globe. We've done 6 summer retreats in Bozeman, Montana, private community. I'm so blessed. I'm so thankful. We do a lot of courses online. And as I mentioned, anything is possible, the Veronica, without this, and I have plans, of course, but I think I've brought those more into the short term and left more room open for the universe to guide those plans. So I'll just fill you in my life a little bit without flexing here, because I don't think this is ego. This is just like where my life is right now.
I just want to say, Paul, like, this is what I want people to hear, right? I mean, you described someone who really like ran their life off the road. You didn't really have anything. I mean, you were making a living, it sounds like, but you were about to blow everything up. Like, I love the contrast. I love the contrast of the just blowing our lives up and then what is possible. And what I want to stress is it's not, I say this all the time to my clients, and when I do groups, it's like, I'm not special and different. Like, don't look at me and think, oh, you were lucky, or like you had, and I know it's the same for you. We just put one foot in front of the other and we put sobriety first, and life will then open up for you. Of course, there's going to be challenges because that's how life is, but life opens up. That's my experience. So I love the contrast of where you were and where you are now.
Yeah, well said, Veronica. I actually ran my life off the road twice, once at the bar and then once in 2014.
Yeah.
I woke up in a suicide-proof jail cell.
Yeah.
After DUI and stuff. But, I think part of that is a fear for a lot of people. This is not just in this space. It's a fear to really connect with our authentic self. There's been a fear to kick the ball of life. That's a metaphor. But also when I was 5 years old, my parents have footage of me playing youth soccer and I would sprint up to the ball. I remember being too afraid to kick it. So maybe this is part self-sabotage. I'm not sure with that. Maybe there's some more consciousness or awareness that needs to arise there. But, I think fully stepping into our authenticity and power is quite terrifying.
Mm-hmm.
And we also live in a society that, I don't want to say like wants to keep us asleep, but it's like, hey, if you're not feeling good, there's a pill, there's a program, there's a format, there's a diet. And the answer is always without. And I think this journey has shown me the most important thing, that the answer is within. And there's some universal laws that I had no way of exploring, such as your outer world mirrors your inner world, right? If you do the inner work and you find and you build, you accumulate inner peace, this can be done sitting in nature, there's a million ways to do it. Your outer world has to respond, and vice versa. It's like your outer world is the same as your inner world. I had no idea. And I can clearly see that stuff. But where I'm at, I'm coming up on 10 years without a drink. Here are the highlights. Like, I got married 2 years ago. The opposite of addiction is connection. Like, holy crap, I think that's the most pinnacle relationship that somebody can have in their lifetime. One of them, right? We have a baby boy coming in June. I am Zooming in or riversiding in with you at my house in Costa Rica. 2 years ago, I bought a house in Costa Rica. I taught an alcohol-free ukulele course in Costa Rica. I've taught a Restore Dry January course down here. Knock on wood, with 0 internet interruptions. Like, this is really neat stuff that is possible with, yes, the technology that we have today, but B, a life where I'm not ingesting a very toxic chemical. Now I still eat ice cream. I go hard in the paint with maple donuts. There's still things I say, I shouldn't be doing that. Should be doing more than that. But that's normal. That's life. And it's just accepting life as it is. But anything is possible. And I'll say one more thing with that. Before, ran the life into the ditch a couple times, music was my life from ages probably 16 to 22. I was playing in bands. And then when the addiction took over, it died. Like that dream died. I thought for sure I was going to be a rock star, whatever, music would somehow be a part of my life. And that died for like a decade and a half, actually. And it didn't come back day one of sobriety either. I remember picking up a guitar in early sobriety. I was like, the joy is not there. Well, thankfully, I think COVID helped me with this. I had to force it at first, but I'm playing a lot of music now. As I mentioned, I'm teaching alcohol-free ukulele classes. There's a ukulele brand called Kala that sponsored all 3 classes. They've sent me 6 free ukuleles. Like, I think that's one of the coolest things in the entire world, to be able to say, like, I'm sponsored by a ukulele company, an instrument that's just so expansive and helps people connect. Life's going good right now, and anything is possible. Absolutely, Veronica.
That's just so. Do you go between Montana and Costa Rica? Is that what you're currently doing?
Yeah. And before I put strict parameters, 6 months here, 6 months there, I want to leave time for the universe to say, I'll know. It'll probably like 8 and 4, more time in Montana than here. It's quite hot here. I'm used to it. I love it. But the elements are very hot. And in Montana in the summer, that's a tough one to beat for sure.
So I was 10 years sober when I had my first child. So,
okay.
Yeah. And so congratulations.
Thank you.
It's the journey.
What am I in for?
Oh my God. I just want to say, first of all, parenting, lots of people remain child-free, there's lots of roads in life. I was never like massively baby hungry or anything. I just thought that that's just something you did. And being a mother has just been it's absolutely the greatest joy. Now, I'll tell you what's really interesting for me. So when I was 10 years sober when I got pregnant with my first son, and I will say that I have a black belt in mental health. Like, I have worked very hard on myself. I had a very established, decade-long, rigorous program that I worked extremely regularly. I've done tons of therapy workshops, you name it. I just that's what I've done. And becoming a parent opens up things in yourself that you never would have accessed. And I was recommending some books before we started the podcast. I was surprised at what it opened up in me from stuff from my own childhood. I think one of the things that what I discovered, and I see this, I see other people say the same thing, is let me backpedal here. As a therapist, one of the interesting questions you can ask your clients is, if you're a parent, or if you imagine having kids, would you parent the same way your parents did? Because nearly always the answer is like, oh, well, this bit, but not that bit, right? So then you I found myself parenting the same way my mother did, but I was aware, I saw it. Like I was like, and I was like, whoa. And that was like, I started shouting, and so there was, which then triggered me to change my behavior and parent differently. So it will open up unresolved childhood issues in yourself and your response and your partner. And it's your responsibility to work on those stuff and be aware of them. And you also get what you get. I have 2 boys who, my eldest son is football crazy. My youngest son was kind of take it or leave it, but was a dancer, and we kind of had that. And now he's gone over to football. And I was saying to someone the other week, I said, I've really got to get into football more. I just got into football a lot because of Taylor Swift, like the Taylor Swift effect. I really enjoyed that. Yeah. But I'm like, okay, this is going to be my life. Like, it's really their thing. Like, my eldest son talks about it all day. Like, I got to get, because I want to be in their world, and I want to be included in all of that. So it is, the younger years are very tough. We're in the sweet spot right now. We're in the sweet spot where they're independent. but they still love you and want to be with you. It's the greatest adventure of your life. It really is. Is there enough there to chew on?
Yeah, thank you for sharing. I'm excited. And there's something about it where when you tell somebody, it's before people think it's like, oh my gosh, congratulations. So there's something to it. And I think this is why we are here in all species, is to pass on what we've learned to others and to keep survival. I think it's built into our DNA code that the more copies of DNA that we have out there, the more success we'll have as a species. So I think at the primordial level, like this is a healthy thing for me to explore. I'm excited to get out of my head. I also recognized, in this journey, there's almost like an addiction to fixing. And this happens sometimes when we get in the mental health world. There's like, whoa, like I can fix everything. I'm gonna read this book. Like there's a book for that, book for that. And I've had to tone down the fixing of myself and try to insert more lines of code of acceptance of like, hey man, we're good just the way we are. Of course we can improve our life, but we don't have to go to this retreat and that retreat and download this platform and then and all that stuff served a purpose, absolutely. But I'm excited to like stop fixing myself and like helping somebody else out. I've already seen that happen.
It's the instant cure for selfishness. And you don't realize you just don't realize how selfish, and I don't want to just how much you can just, I don't want to say selfish, but how you can please yourself when you don't have kids. You can just please yourself, right? You get up when you want, within reason. And it's kind of a shock to the system, but it's also, you fall so deeply in love so quickly that, I remember I was thinking like, I don't know, I was like in a department store trying on makeup and there was like, there's this. And I'm like, I'm a mom. I just need like really quick. And I was thinking, God, I remember when I was single, oh God, the lengths I would go to, getting ready. And it's like, oh, that's like, I need 15 minutes. That's what I haven't got 2 hours or anything like that. And it's a really nice rebalancing. You do, definitely in the early years. And I think definitely if you're the mother, I nursed both of my children. And I was a parent at 38 and 42. So I was right at kind of the end there. I was very much like, I've done all the things. I've traveled, I've done the shows, I've been everywhere. I'm quite happy staying home for a few years. Like I don't really need to go anywhere. So I felt very content like that. But you kind of have this pie and there's this really small slither that's just for you. That's grown, that will grow over time. But when they're really young, you'll have maybe a tiny sliver of time and energy where you can do something that's just for you. Like, it was years before I saw like a movie I wanted to watch. Right. So luckily my kids and I like all the Star Wars and all that kind of stuff. But like in terms, but also it's the season of life. Someone said this to me, I read this somewhere, it shocked me. We only really have our children for 19 years. And I was like, and because we have them for 18 years. And then after that, when off they go, for the rest, like, it's like you have them for another year because they're off, right? If you think, like you were in Spain, right? How many times did your parents see you in your 20s? Like my mom lives in a different country. I see my mom maybe 3 weeks a year.
Yeah.
And
wow.
I was like, oh my God, that's so true. I'm planning on living down the same road as my children, wherever they, I haven't told them that, but so that you have this season, you're going to have this season and it will go. The season will change to be in the season.
Yeah. Let me guess. It goes by fast, right?
The days are long and the days are long and the years are short. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I'm very aware of that with my 12-year-old who'll be 13 in September. Like I can literally feel it now. I know we are so close to 18 and bang, college, that like I feel very like I just got back from London and he came downstairs this morning. He just came and hugged me and he held me for a long time. And I just was like, I'm just going to be in this moment. I'm just going to be in this moment. His head comes up to my chin. I'm just going to smell him and be in this moment.
Wow. Yeah. What a neat moment.
Yeah. So our children are here to teach us. They are our teachers.
I think that will be the meditation, right? And patience. It's like being in it. Yeah, I had a nephew once, and I do still have a nephew, but I remember visiting when my nephew was like 2 or 3. I was like, no, I can't do this. I had total myself, I cannot do this. So I'm happy for myself to like entering in consciously into a hard thing, because the answer is always the same. It's the best thing you've ever going to do and the hardest thing you're ever going to
Yeah.
do. Oh, it sounds
Yeah.
like sobriety as well, right? So I'm
Yeah.
excited to voluntarily go into this. There's fear, of course. There's
Yeah.
also the uncertainty of the world. Is the climate even going to hold up? I don't know. I think we'll all be okay. I do.
I think one of the challenges is managing your fear, because you when you become a parent, you will never be free from fear again. And there are moments when it can feel quite overwhelming. And your job is to manage that so it doesn't affect them.
Hmm. Well, I think without alcohol, that should help.
Yeah.
And
Oh my
nothing's
God.
in the bag yet, right?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think as long as I stay true to that route, because it's still yielding many, many fruits,
Yeah.
I think I got a good shot at
Yeah.
least.
Yeah. Tell me before we finish, I'd love to know, like, tell me what works for you in sobriety and personal development and spirituality. You kind of referred when you were that 2.5 year stint, you didn't really work on your spirituality. Tell me what's different now and what works for you.
I have to stay connected, and I go to AA, but mostly for the community. I'm in a very remote place in Costa Rica on the northwest coast of Guanacaste, but I go to 2 meetings, and it's a wonderful community. You show up and you're instantly accepted. I go to our own cafe, our e-chats. These are our meetings, mostly to stay connected. One thing is it's less rigid now than it was at the beginning. I needed those rules. I did Howell Rod's 5 a.m. miracle morning for like a year and a half. And now it's more intuitive. Like there's less to-do lists. If I find my body turning right, well, that's where I need to go. And if I find my body stretching my hamstring, well, that's what needs to happen in that moment. And it's less planned out far in the future. It's more brought into, the next couple weeks ahead, the next week. Music is a big part of me that I'm still trying to open that aperture and continue to play more music. It's success. Last year, I uploaded my first album to Spotify ever. And this is my first album since I was like 21, 22, under the artist name of Paul Churchill. I'm happy with myself with that, just to have done it. If I had to learn Logic Pro, like the internet or like software side of things. So everything is changing. We're in constant flux.
Yeah.
And the same, my recovery portfolio, or like how I stay away from alcohol today, is going to be different tomorrow. But that's not even the best way to phrase it. How do I stay away from something, right? Yeah, that's one way to do it. Or how do I invite more love into my life where alcohol just like doesn't really seem appealing anymore? I'm so immersed in nature where I'm at.
I hear that about Costa Rica. The people who go there, it's just so, the natural world there is spectacular.
Yeah, and I think their country is putting a map out there for the rest of the world of they're recognizing that a tree is worth more to them alive and rooted into the ground than dead. And with all the plants, like it's the contrast is so big. I live in Montana, where I'm probably one of my only people that doesn't hunt and fish. It's a $1 billion industry in America is hunting. You can't shoot a deer here. It's illegal. There's no permits you can get. And if that quantum science stuff that Einstein talked about is true, then all the citizens get the benefits because their animals aren't running away from hunters during hunting season, right? And we absolutely get the mental benefits of healthier, happier animals. I think that's part of it. I do. There's a lot of unrest today across the globe. And I don't think that unrest is separate from the unrest of our animal brothers and sisters, the trees and whatnot. So yeah, I like reptiles, Veronica. And almost every night I put on a headlamp. I have 2 headlamps that I have to alternate charging. Like I've got the system figured out. And I go out with my dog at night and I look for critters. Sometimes I find nothing, but I always find something, even if it's like a beautiful spider web in a tree. Or sometimes I'll find a boa constrictor, which just brings me so into the present moment, Veronica. Oh my gosh. I have found 3 boa constrictors.
Oh my God.
Two of them have bitten me. And all 3 of them were spiritual experiences. And I got one of them to the point where I was able to free handle it. And it just pulls you into the present moment. I see your face. It's like, oh my God.
I'm not
and I
into
understand.
reptiles. I'm the mother of 2 boys and I'm like not into that.
Yeah, and not everybody shares the same affinity towards that, but that's my wiring. That's how I
Yeah.
am. And maybe
Yeah.
somebody else, when they get sober, they move to their favorite city. You
Yeah.
know, they want an urban landscape or whatnot. But
Yeah.
I feel at home with the soundtrack of the crickets underneath the beautiful view of the stars. I can hear the ocean in my backyard. And I'm learning every day the wildlife, the trees.
Mm.
There's an app called Merlin. This tells you the bird sounds. So part of my meditation now, and I've been studying this for a while, I'll close my eyes and listen and be like, oh, that's a social flycatcher. There we go. That's a white fronted parrot. That's a chestnut sided warbler. That's a yellow Inca dove. You get the point. That is the meditation. It's been a lot of fun.
That sounds beautiful. So, anything is possible. What's your hopes and dreams for the next 10 years? I mean, obviously being a parent is going to be a big part of that.
That's a big one. That's what I've been asking. Hey, give me the strength to be a good father,
Mm.
to create a perimeter or a border around this young child,
Mm.
to be safe. And if the conditions are right, a flower will bloom. If the
Mm.
conditions are not right, a flower will not bloom.
Mm.
So my job is to create the correct conditions, and that's the point. Music, Veronica, we just talked about this.
Mm-hmm.
I want to keep playing music. I also want to keep honing in my craft as a teacher,
Mm.
as a guide. I feel like I'm just hitting my stride with some of our sobriety courses, like our Dry January. We just started one last night called Ditching the Booze, the What, the Why, and the How. I want to keep being a pupil of the universe. As you said, a child is going to be one of our best teachers. I think my most intense learnings as a pupil are ahead of me. And I think a big lesson is love. I've got that notion from the universe a couple of times of, Paul, you're about to learn the lesson of just true, pure, innocent love. Of course, I love my wife,
Yeah.
but I think a different type of love
Yeah.
is just around the horizon, Veronica.
Yeah. That's my experience. It is a different form of love that can only be experienced between a parent and child, it's like nothing you've ever experienced before. There's no other way of putting it. There's nothing close. And with that comes a lot of fear, and you've got to navigate and manage all of that. And all of that is better in sobriety. So I'm excited for you. It's such a wonderful
Thank you.
adventure.
Thank you.
Tell people where they can find you. Where's all your stuff at?
Okay. Yeah, Veronica, the podcast is Recovery Elevator. You can put a .com at the end of that. And there you can find, we're also on Instagram, of course. But on the website, you can find out about our retreats, our upcoming alcohol-free travel trips, and our courses and things like that. Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, I hope to run into you one day in Costa Rica. That's definitely on my bucket list to do a retreat there or visit there at least. So,
absolutely.
Yeah. Cool. All right, everybody. Thank you so much. I'd love to hear your thoughts and comments on the podcast when it goes live. Let us know on social media and check out Paul's work. And we will see you next week. Thanks so much for listening. Bye-bye.